Washington Journal continues.
And joining us now is Congressman Gregory Meeks, also of New York State, a Democrat. He's here to talk to us about the latest developments in the presidential campaign, including outreach efforts by both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton to black voters. Congressman, good morning. Thank you for joining us. So I just want to get to the outreach efforts toward minorities so far. I want to just pull out a quote that you gave to the Observer recently about Donald Trump's efforts to reach out to black voters. You said, Trump has repeatedly shown himself to be a bigot who repeatedly kowtows to the priorities of white supremacists and right-wing extremists. You look at his history, his discriminatory housing policies and perpetual racist lies about our community, and what he did in regards to our president, and you know, with reference to his birth certificate, his relationship to white supremacists, he has shown that the African American community, he has no concern for our well-being whatsoever. Clearly you don't mince words. Can you expand upon that, and do you still believe that?
Well, how do you judge a person? There's primarily two ways you judge a person: by their actions and their deeds. That's all you can do. And so if you just accurately look at the actions and the deeds of Mr. Trump, then clearly you see that he has made bigotry remarks, he has lied, and therefore he is what I consider a con man, and the worst kind of con man, a con man that out lies right in front of your face and dares you to check him, and when you do check him, he still lies about it. I mean, and that has happened over and over in this campaign. That's how you get, I mean, I don't know, I generally try to look at the best of individuals, but when we're talking about selecting someone to be the next president of the United States, you do have to check out who they are. And the only way that I know that you can do it is by their words and their deeds. You go to his deeds from the very beginning, with the racial discriminatory practices with his father in their business. You look at what he did to the Central Park Five, never apologizing, coming up with an ad in the local newspapers. He paid $85,000 for it when it was shown that they did not commit it. He's never said anything about that. You looked at the birther remarks as he started out with the first president of the United States. Then he had one African American who says, "That's my African American." You look at the words that he used with regards to Mexican Americans and Muslims. How else can you judge him? And I've been giving him, you know, so there's no question in my mind. And then he tries to flip-flop to go to, now he's been in New York all of his professional career. He's been to a black church one time when he went to Detroit, and going to make us think that he's really reaching out to the African American community? That's a con man.
Let me ask you this. He says that Democrats have taken African American votes for granted, and there are Democrats or black voters, black Americans, do make less, are more prone to live in impoverished places. Do you think that Democratic policies have failed the African American population?
And if you look at it, you see things that are going up and down, you know, because clearly, you know, if you look at unemployment, it was going down under Bill Clinton. It went up substantially under George Bush. It's gone down some under Barack Obama. So there's policies. But when you think about it, you know, we've got to deal better, of course, to erase and eliminate those disparities. But we also got to deal better with reference to poverty in America. That's why Jim Clyburn had come out with a formula called 10-20-30 to eliminate poverty. Because if you look at, if you want to blame poverty on Democrats in predominantly American communities, then you have to blame poverty on Republicans in places like Appalachia and other areas where there are whites. And there's a large number of whites who are also in poverty, and they're represented by Republicans.
The Charlotte Observer points out that Hillary Clinton is facing an enthusiasm gap among some black voters. It says that she has campaigned with President Obama at the Charlotte Convention Center, but not long after, a new report underscored the lack of enthusiasm for her among many young African American voters. What do you think she needs to do to convince young voters, in particular young black voters, to support her?
that you see that's happening now as we get into September and people are really focusing on. I think you'll hear that as she's moving forward in the debate process. When you talk about and look at what they're proposing to do as president, you look at her plans with reference to investing in urban and rural America, but in urban America, creating jobs and opportunities, making sure that everybody has a role in that, better education for our young folks. I know when she was the senator in New York, for example, she was a prime proponent and mover and shaker for public education and things like the Eagle Academy for boys to try to make sure that they get what they need so that they can, it's an investment in the future. So I look at what she has stood for and what she is proposing as the next president of the United States, and you can see how she can build upon the progress that President Obama has made over the last 8 years.
Okay, we have a lot of callers waiting to speak to Congressman Gregory Meeks, who is joining us this segment. Up first, we have Ernie calling in from Asheville, Ohio, on our Democratic line. Good morning, Ernie.
Yes, good morning.
Good
Bear
morning.
with me because I'm on oxygen 24/7. I have two comments about Donald Trump. Donald Trump says he wants to make America great, but when he builds his buildings, he goes and get from Mexico green cards holders and have him build the buildings, his buildings. The only way you can make America great is to have American people have good paying jobs.
Okay,
And,
let's let the congressman respond to that point.
Again, and I say that's Donald Trump's motto, let's make America great again. What do you mean by that, Donald Trump? Because Barack Obama became the 44th president of the United States? To me, that was a undertone that he was utilizing because of that presidency. And you're absolutely right. Again, you judge a person by their actions. And if you look at his business actions in the past, and people talk about his business acumen, his business judgment, and he's been successful. Well, you can't do what he has done as a business person, as president of the United States. You can't file bankruptcy when the government, we're dealing with the budget, as he has done when his businesses fail because he made bad business decisions to cause them to fail. So look at his judgment. Look at what he's done over the course of his lifetime and in his business. His businesses are not, if you can bail him out, give him bankruptcy, that's what he's done. Make America great again as compared to what? What period is he saying that we should go back to?
Well, let's take a look at a Donald Trump ad that he launched against Hillary Clinton on the issue of immigration.
In Hillary Clinton's America, the system stays rigged against Americans. Syrian refugees flood in. Illegal immigrants convicted of committing crimes get to stay, collecting Social Security, skipping the line. Our border open, it's more of the same, but worse. Donald Trump's America is secure. Terrorists and dangerous criminals kept out. The border secure. Our families safe. Change that makes America safe again. Donald Trump for president.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
What's your reaction to the ad?
Fear is not going to work in this campaign. Facts will, okay? And what Secretary Clinton is proposing is comprehensive immigration reform. What President Obama has done, if you committed a crime in this country, etc., those people have been deported. What we're talking about is we got over 11 million people who have been law-abiding, paying taxes, etc., is looking at a comprehensive way so that individuals who can earn their citizenship, and there will be a price to pay, economically and otherwise, and there's standards that have to be lived up to, keeping families together. So you can't put, and I think he's trying to put fear into these elections. Fear is not going to win this election. Ideas will. And clearly, Hillary Clinton has the ideas. Donald Trump has none.
Okay, up next we have Sadie calling in on our independent line from Apple Valley, California. Sadie, you're on with Congressman Meeks.
Good morning, Congressman Meeks. How are you today?
Very good. Good morning.
People need to understand what Donald Trump is all about. He has businesses that are overseas. His clothing lines overseas. His daughter's clothing line is overseas. And the thing I haven't heard either, you cannot bring these jobs back. And this is what I don't understand, why people don't understand. We're saying we're going to make jobs, we're going to bring, Donald Trump keeps saying we're going to bring the jobs back. Most of these manufactured jobs are not coming back, and we have to deal with that reality. But we need to make jobs with our infrastructure. Those are the type of jobs we need here now. We have jobs in India where companies have taken their service part of their company to India, the different Indonesia, and we as a country have to be realistic about things. We are in a global economy now, and jobs are not coming back, so we need to make jobs that are here. And another comment, and then I'm going to get off the line. It has been so many times when things are not going right for the white America, we always blame each individual group. At first it was the Irish, then the Chinese, then the blacks, now the Mexicans, but now it was the blacks again, but now it's the Mexicans. So we as people of the United States need to look at our trend, what we're seeing, and how we say these things when our economy is not going back.
Okay, Sadie, let's let the congressman address those points.
I agree with you. We are in a global economy, and therefore there are different kinds of jobs that have to be created, and we've got to make sure that we focus on them. And I think that is exactly, you are exactly right, and Hillary Clinton is exactly right when she talks about infrastructure, transportation and infrastructure. That creates jobs here in America. It's the same way when we built the highway structure in America and we were building the train systems. We need new rail systems in the United States. That creates jobs and opportunities. It is important. And that's why Hillary Clinton's theme, unlike Donald Trump's, is we are stronger together as a nation when we bring everybody together. Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, we all working together. Muslim, Jew, Christian, Hindu, everybody, all religions, all ethnicities. We all are working together. That's what makes, and that's why America is the greatest country it is. And we will continue to be the greatest because we are stronger together. That's her message. And that's what I think is what people will rally around and why she'll be the 45th president of the United States.
Okay, on our Republican line, we have David calling in from Oneonta of New York. Am I saying that right, David?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you very much. Yeah, speaking to Mr. Weeks here, we mentioned Obama's accomplishments. Yeah, the biggest thing he did was bail out General Motors, but his other biggest accomplishment was he's got us almost $20 trillion in debt, and I'd like to know how you propose we get out of that. And secondly, you're supporting Hillary Clinton, who she claims she was broke when she left office, and now 7.5 years later, she's worth over $100 million. I'd like to know if you know where that money came from.
Well, I'll say this. First off, you know, I don't know anybody, you know, she's married to the former president of the United States. And whether we like it or not, when you look at former presidents of the United States, or whether it's George H. Bush, George W. Bush, they all make they've had quite a deal of money before they came in. They happen to have had, but they've also made quite a deal of money once they left. And so there's nothing strange or different about that for the Clintons as it is for any other former president of the United States in that regards. And what was the first part of the question? Do you recall, Kimberly?
I'm sorry, I haven't had enough coffee today, but let me ask you about this. We talked a little bit about the Hillary Clinton's enthusiasm gap among black voters. A new report from the Cook Report shows that President Barack Obama's success came largely from support of black voters who carried him in several key states to victory, and that Hillary Clinton is going to need that same. Shows here in a chart how the black African-American voter turnout has increased through 2012, whereas white turnout went down. Hillary Clinton's going to need that turnout, that Obama coalition, so to speak. Do you think that she could get it?
Yeah, I think that as I said, as she gets on this campaign trail and folks start focusing on the issues and asking her what she will do as president and not just talking about the name calling back and forth, then they will see clearly there's a plan and an agenda that will benefit younger African Americans, the millennials, that she understands what the issues and concerns are. She's the one person, when you talk about criminal justice reform, that has been focused on and working with members of the Congressional Black Caucus and others to try to make sure that we can put forth a strong criminal justice reform. We're talking about building the African American middle class again and investing in our communities. She's the one that has a plan in which to do that and a history of which to show that that's the inclination of where she wants to move to. And that's the kind of enthusiasm. So I think that the young millennials will be listening very intently and very closely as we move forward, and they will be looking at the words and the deeds of Mr. Trump and Secretary Clinton, and that will drive the enthusiasm that's necessary so that she can be elected the 45th president. I'll add to that if you look at the states that historically had always been Republican, Georgia, for example. The reason why Georgia is now in play is because voter registration of African Americans is up in Georgia, and that can make the difference. When you're North Carolina, African Americans are going to be, you look at, she's up in that state. African American voters are up. Virginia. So if you look at some of these key battleground states, you'll see that the enthusiasm of young folks, millennial folks, are a little bit higher than the general population around the country, because that's where the message is really being shown right now, and that's going to be significant as we move on November the 8th.
Okay. Up next we have Colleen calling in from Long Beach, California on our Democratic line. Colleen, you're on with Congressman Meeks.
Hi, I'm visiting my folks in Pennsylvania here, New Holland, and I'm around all my relatives that I grew up with, and so many of them are so misinformed because they listen to right-wing conspiracy type theories. I mean, they think she's responsible for murders, and I just think that we need to address more instead of just always focusing on Donald and all the stuff that's really obvious to us that don't seem to matter to his own constituents, because they are so just dead set thinking about how she's, they blow these half-truths or even her real mistakes into something monstrosity, out of proportion. And like Hitler did with the big lie, it's just, you tell something over and over again. I think we need to be in their own seeds and where they get their information and kind of dispel it. Hillary shouldn't have to do that all the time, but I think the Democratic Party and people of progressives and Republicans that are concerned about what would happen if unstable Trump would get in there, what would happen to this world, they need to really try to figure out how they can get in and dispel some of these concerns that my relatives really have. I mean, they're Mennonite, they're very good people, and they just can't, they don't hear the stuff.
All right.
They don't look.
I agree with you, and that's why I'm here. And that's why I think that you'll see members of Congress and other people of goodwill running around this country over the next 60-odd days, or now 50-odd days, 58, 59 days, getting this message out. When you see someone, for example, as Donald Trump praising Vladimir Putin and saying basically that he is a stronger leader than, say, President Obama, that's unheard of. When you see someone like Mr. Trump, when he's talking about the generals, he knows more than the generals, and the generals are weak in the United States, that's unheard of. And it needs all Americans, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, to come together. We are indeed the greatest country that this planet has ever seen. And we're great because we've overcome difficulties where we had racial discrimination and women not having equal voices and equal protections, and we move forward, and we're becoming and still striving to be a more perfect union. So we are stronger when we come together, and that's what we need to do. And when we hear anybody trying to depict, especially a strong-arm guy like Vladimir Putin, who's KGB, greater than our current president, that's absurd. And I think that what we need, and Hillary is doing, she's talking about who she is, where she's come from, and where she wants to take this country. And that's the positive message that we need to hear. And I think that Hillary is, as we go into the debate season and she moves along, you'll be hearing that from her more and more.
Do you think that race relations have deteriorated in this country since the time that the president has come into office? Or do you agree with him that they've gotten better? What do you think, particularly after the Black Lives Matter movement and the increased focus on race relations?
What I think is we've talked about it more, and I think that's a good thing, because previously, you know, taboo to talk about race. And so I think that what is happening now is we are talking about it more. And that's how we really begin to take it to the next step. And that's why I think things will get better. Because if you sweep something under the rug, then you never resolve the problem. And people will think, as they thought he was elected, that we lived in a post-racial America. Well, those individuals should know, and by dialogue, that we don't. And know, you know, I never thought we would be in a post-racial America, even with the election of Barack Obama. So are we moving in the right direction? Are we better than we were when I was a kid or when my parents were children? Absolutely. Do we got a lot of work to do? Are some things they drift back and we've got to push back forward? Absolutely. But it is good when we can talk and dialogue and be upfront about it. I think the Black Lives Matter movement is a great movement. It's a movement that forced that conversation, and we need to have that conversation.
Earlier this month, the Black Lives Matter movement responded to a leaked memo from the DCCC, a staffer that urged Democrats not to offer concrete policy positions and limit the number of activists they meet with and some other things. In a statement, Black Lives Matter said, "We are disappointed that the DCCC's placating response to our demand to value all black life. Black communities deserve to be heard, not handled. People are dying." What's your response?
My response is, because I think about myself when I was growing up, when I was in college, etc., I would have been probably part of the Black Lives Matter when I think of what I did in college. And I think of how I handle now and how I move around now. It is best, I think, and I think that the memo was basically how to make sure that there's proper communication. So if you have a smaller crowd, you'll have a better way of talking and exchanging ideas than if you have a huge crowd and you're just shouting at one another. I, for example, have decided on a general basis, as opposed to having large town hall meetings, I found that we don't get as much done. But when I have smaller meetings, and maybe I have more of those smaller meetings, then we have a better dialogue back and forth. I'm not misunderstood as much. I understand them better. And I think that what that memo was suggesting to members, so have these smaller meetings that could be more beneficial than ever, and don't try to take over. They don't want you to take over their movement, to tell them what to do. Listen to them. And that's what we sometimes don't do enough, is to listen to folks. And I think that's what they're saying. Listen to what they had to say.
Okay, up next we have Roger calling in on our independent line from McKenzie, Alabama. Good morning, Roger.
Yes, Mr. Weeks, is glad to have you on there. You know, I'm 60, and I've listened to the Democrats for all these years. You know, this is the same story you said 4 years ago. Same story you said 4 years before that, before that, before that, before that. But things have only gotten worse. Now, you can't say they hadn't in the inner cities and stuff. Everybody you try to say that you're going to help. Everybody, look at where you're at now, the unemployment and everything, and the same story you've heard. I mean, you talk about, when you were talking, it changed up my story so much. You're talking about Georgia, how it's changing. Yeah, the illegal children are more in Georgia schools now than the people who were born in the state. And the Latinos here have totally destroyed my profession, which is the construction, and I'm going out on Social Security like everybody else because, you know, you complain about Trump making his shirts in Bangladesh, but you make the rules. This is just the world I have to live in. That's the world he has to live in. He can't make shirts here because you've got it set up in Bangladesh, so he has to go there.
Okay, let's give the congressman a chance to respond.
Well, Trump does have a choice. There are some people you can manufacture here. You can create jobs and opportunity here if you want to. And he decided that he did not want to. Let me just say that in my lifetime, this country, it has become better for all of us. You go around the world, it is still the greatest country on this planet. You look at our economy, it is still the strongest economy in the world. Do we got to continue to strive to be a more perfect union? That's absolutely yes. But our diversity is what helps makes us that strength. We've got to make sure that we do secure our borders. No one is saying that we should not do that, but comprehensively, we secure our borders and come with an immigration plan that works for all Americans, that makes us the greatest country that this planet has ever seen. And we will continue to do that, and we will be successful only if we do it together. If we divide ourselves up, and that's where you see that in other countries and other places, people divide themselves up either by ethnicity or religion or some other reason, that's what destroys them. We won't do that in the United States of America.
All right, up next on our Democratic line, we have Patrick calling in from Carnegie, Pennsylvania. Patrick, you're on with Congressman Gregory Meeks.
You know, Congressman Meeks needs to get a clue. Let me be very clear. The first thing that this president should have done as president of the United States is to implement the fairness doctrine in media, instead of which he became the most infamous collusionist with World Bank operatives in the history of this country. There has never been a greater failure of a president in race relations in this country. Look what has happened. He is a disaster as a president. Now, I'm a Democrat. I voted for this president twice. Meeks, you need to get a clue. You need to understand. You need to actually provide a mea culpa on the position that this president has represented when it comes to anything positive in this country. He's allowed bankers to get away with the greatest destruction of economic infrastructure in the history of this country. We are literally on the precipice of an economic implosion with sovereign debt of other nations, which this president has articulated and participated in.
Okay, let's let the congressman respond.
Let's make the record clear. What this president did, he inherited the worst recession since the Great Depression. We had an economy that was losing 850,000 jobs a month. We had an automobile industry that was about to go down the tubes. We had people losing their homes left and right. The first bill this president came in, he passed the Liddy Ledbetter law. The Ledbetter law means that a woman gets an equal day's pay for equal day's work. He made sure that there's over 20 million Americans that did not have health care insurance before, that they had health care insurance. He saved the automobile industry, which we have lost thousands of more jobs. What he did, he went back where we had enemies all across the war. We were in 3 wars, and he made sure that we mended and we started working together with our allies who were pulling away from us. So let the facts be clear of what this president has done. He has turned us around from the greatest recession since the Great Depression and has made a tremendous difference. And when historians look back, that has to be given a credit to President Obama, even though he had a hostile Congress who tried to block him at every step of the way. Could have gotten more jobs if we had just been able to pass a transportation infrastructure bill, for example.
All right, Joe, calling in from Holland, Michigan on our Republican line. You're on with Congressman Meeks. Good morning.
Yes, a little bit sidetracked because of the last caller. You can bet that things are just not better. But in respect to Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, I think that we have to ask ourselves, who's the builder? Who's built anything? Hillary Clinton is good at one thing. She's good at collecting money, distributing it. If you want to, if you want to see her, if you got enough money, you can see her. But at the end of the day, somebody that's going to build something. Buildings get built, things get built. You want people building, or you want to just reproduce? Let's gather up everybody else's money, and it's just not right.
All right, let's let the congressman respond.
Yes, well, Donald Trump, you say he's built it. Who has Donald Trump done anything for other than Donald Trump and Donald Trump's family? So much so that even at the Republican convention, the only people that he really could get to vouch for him was his family, because that's all he's ever taken care of. He's never cared about the general population. And what Donald Trump has done, I think, a bad business acumen, when he's made bad decisions. He's filed several bankruptcies to try to bail himself out of the bad decisions and to protect who? Only Donald Trump. So I go by what people have done. Hillary Clinton, her whole life, has been trying to lift and help somebody and been involved in government. And I know sometimes I give you a track record that one wants to criticize. But when I look at from the time that she left college and law school to be the first lady of the state of Arkansas, then the United States of America, and then a senator who I worked with very closely from New York, Secretary of State. All of it has been in trying to, with the vein of trying to help make this country the best country that it is. Her contributions to our country is far superior to the contribution that Donald Trump, who's only cared about himself and won't even show his tax returns, because when you see his thing about a charity or anything else, only Donald Trump.
All right, up next we have Sarah calling in from Vernon, New York on our independent line. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning, dear. Thank you to C-SPAN. This is for Mr. Meeks.
Yes.
Sir, I seem to remember a bill that was passed bipartisanly in the Senate about immigration and then was never brought up in the House. I called the Republican leaders in the Senate and asked one of his people why, and they said that they disagreed with the bill in certain parts. And I said, why didn't you just send it back to committee to see if you could change it?
All right.
Well, ma'am,
They said they...
Let him respond.
I couldn't agree with you more. That was the bill where we had the Gang of Eight on the Senate side in a bipartisan manner to deal with comprehensive immigration reform. It is a bill that I probably would have voted for had we had a vote on the floor of the House. Unfortunately, what has been taking place on the House side, we can't even vote on bills. You know, we left, and that's one of the issues that we're dealing with now. We would like to vote. I mean, I think it's a national crisis now on Zika. We can't get a vote on Zika. A clean, plain vote on a national security, health issue, health concern, Zika. We can't get a vote on that. We can't get a vote on no fly, no buy with reference to guns and closing the gun show loophole. That's it. We just want to vote on it and let people who vote yes or no, and that's what happens right now on the House floor. I don't think the American people want that. It's clearly the Senate can do certain things in a bipartisan manner. I would hope that we get to the point that the House would at least put some of these bills on the floor, let us have a vote up or down so the American people know where we stand.
All right, Congressman Gregory Meeks from New York, Democrat, thank you for joining us this morning.
Good to be with you.
And up next, Congress has only 3 weeks to get things done before recessing again through the November election. What do you think?